Well, hello, everybody. Um, this is Eric Schwartzman with Derek Iwasiuk. He is the co-founder of Search Tides. I'm happy to have him with me here today for a discussion about enterprise SEO. Derek, welcome.
Hey, Eric, thanks for having me on.
Yeah. So I'm gonna dive into some enterprise SEO questions. I have a ton of them. I don't even know if we'll get through them all. But just before I do, at a high level, um, you know, I, I I'm searching for a coat. I want a full length men's goose down coat, and I'm pretty good at searching for things online, and I can't
Mhm.
find it. That search and every variation I can think of it returns me waist length coats that are not black and they're not goose down. So, I mean, the SEOs have won and you can't find what you want anymore. That
Yeah.
kind of seems like that's where we're at. I mean, search is becoming less useful. Would you agree?
Yeah, right now we're kind of going through this huge transition where AI is it's come and dominating the search. AI is also being used by content creators, and so everyone's kind of having to combat spam at a high level. And also just like the playbook of what ranks seems to have changed a lot just because of all the content creation just kind of going down the toilet, right? So, and makes it a little bit more difficult to rank. And authentic brands are, struggling a lot right now with this kind of stuff. So,
So when I was searching for the coat, I'm
yeah,
finding brands. I'm finding Columbia, I'm finding North Face, I'm finding
yeah,
Nordstrom, but the page that I'm finding is typically a collection page that doesn't have the product I'm looking for on it.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it's going to be down to individual queries, but there's a lot of like recommendations in terms of like the way e-commerce stores are set up specifically, and a lot of that could is kind of circling back to what's helpful because Google is kind of doing this big helpful content updates, and a lot of the things that they might be saying is that it's not necessarily helpful for a user or a store to display 15 of the same jacket just because they have different variants, right? But even though like when we're searching for it, you're most likely going to be looking for a specific size, a specific color of the jacket, what length of the waist, or where it hangs on you, and or even if it has the fuzzy collar or whatever like that versus non-fuzzy, right? So the more specific you want in terms of the consumer, it's actually more helpful to have that result displayed. But we have issues on the back end from e-commerce stores where they're like, okay, well, our product description is the exact same for all of them almost, right? And so it's becoming more and more difficult to protect the index. Usually, what I say, like you have to choose what you want to have indexed by Google, and so people have to make kind of like cuts to say like, oh, we don't want to have. Well, these are all 15 products that are exactly the same on paper, except for the size is different, whatever, right? So that makes it harder for Google to decide what to rank.
So before I get into this deep dive, can you tell
Yeah,
me how I can find a frickin' coat? Because I need a long coat. I just moved to New York.
yeah,
I'm not used to this weather. I mean, it's like, single digits out here. And I need one of those long, full length puffers,
yeah.
and I can't find one. What do I search? How would you find one if you were looking for one online?
Nowadays, I pretty much just go to Amazon and start looking there. But um, the big players have a different set of rules than the smaller players, and that's kind of like unfair. Say, for example, the way we would optimize like an Amazon product is going to be a little different than we have, say, like a small merchant with like a very small link profile, like because they can't get away with the same set of rules
Well,
to
you're
what
an enterprise guy. Let's say I am an enterprise manufacturer of full length men's goose down coats,
yeah.
and I want to rank, and I see how competitive it is. What does it take to win in that environment?
Yeah, so you're gonna for something like this where you're gonna want to actually publish all the different variants as much as possible as you can of your specific coat. And say, like, if you're using Shopify, there's different setup options, right? So you can have your small, medium, large type jacket, for example, and you can publish those things.
So you're saying I publish a different page for each size of the jacket.
Yeah, you can do. So there's a double-edged knife to this, right? So you can go, the bigger the e-commerce store is, usually they can get away with a little bit more of this stuff, right? Like, so I've given examples where, like Home Depot, for example, they can publish category pages, and because people are going to be searching for like a red front loader washing machine with top loader, or front loader, or whatever like that is, and they can have all those different variations indexed and it won't hurt them at all. But then you go to like a smaller company like we have here in Winnipeg, which is like the Brick, for example. um, any of those queries, it's going to land onto that main category page only, right? And they just have that. Google basically will just take all those URLs and just like, no, there's just, it's too low quality, it's too this, it doesn't. You don't have the authority to have those different variations.
So Derek, you've been doing this a while,
Yeah,
and now you're doing it at the highest level with some of the biggest brands in the world in some of the most competitive niches. How is enterprise SEO changing?
it's for one, the number one thing in our opinion is changing is the uh, strategy and content development. So if the number one thing like we bring on to a customer is their number one goal is to get non-branded traffic, right? They already have a lot of branded traffic, Goose down coats and stuff like that by brand, Canadian Goose or whatever, and they have a lot of that traffic covered. But they're not getting the winter coat jacket queries and stuff like that, and that's what they kind of want to work on. The problem is, um, with blog content nowadays, it gets very, people are writing it for search engines only. They're not really writing it for consumers. They're targeting sets of keywords. They're going after basically um, SEO from the 90s, right? So put a keyword in the title tag, write an article, publish it, and rinse and repeat, right? So now we're a lot more focusing on is, would that content make sense to be on the publisher's sites if Google did not exist, right? So if a consumer came to your website, would they actually read that article, or is it only just clickbait, right? So is it clickbait for the search engines? Because that stuff is what's getting a lot of publishers in trouble, right? So they might be looking at, say, like a so if you're publishing about coats, right, doesn't really make sense to be publishing two things about, you know what to eat in the coldest cities in the world or something like that, just because he might have like a 1% relationship to having like a winter coat or something, so all that stuff is a little bit more important. You have to basically protect the index, like, so protect what you publish and let Google index for. And it's also going to throw you off of what we call is like a topical hub.
All right,
So
well, we're going to get into the topical relevancy thing, but before we do, can Google tell the difference between AI and human content?
yes and no. So they can, at the basic level, if you're going to go into Chat GPT or any of those tools and just say like write an article like that, it's going to be able to very easily use its, those tools just use a predictive text engine, right? And they're using common phrases, common sentences, and they have a lot of words that just are very AI. They always say like dive or delve deep into this article or whatever like that. There's a lot of phrases that people don't usually use. Their copywriting skills are different than most people, and also their grammar is usually just like too perfect for a lot of people, right? So sometimes it's better to have a little bit of human error in your text, and then it kind of separates you. But at the forefront, generic AI content is very easy to find. And if as a human reader and you can tell if it's something's AI, Google's already developed like an algorithm basically to decode that, right, and figure that out. But there are people who can write AI content and get away with it for years. So
Are you still using human writers, or have you moved mostly to AI? And if not, like, is AI
yeah,
playing any role in content development for you now?
no, we use AI, but all our writers still exist, but they're AI enabled. So a writer can write an article with AI, but they can't use AI to write like the article exclusively. So they can use it to generate content outlines, and then they help fill it out, and then or take content and expand upon it. We do a lot of things like remove fluff from articles with just AI. So if you have a 10,000 word article that just doesn't perform very well, they'll go in there and use AI to remove the fluff, like get rid of the nonsense and stuff like that. So a lot of people kind of write 10,000 words and don't really say anything, right? So but we use it. We do use a lot of AI. We've gotten rid of a lot of writers out of the box. Like a poor end writer is very easily replaced by an AI. A high end writer, not so much. So
Talk to us for a moment about the
Mhm.
concept of brand search. What is
Sure.
brand search and why does it matter?
So at the high level, brand search is what people are searching to find your brand. So the basic ones are, say, like, if you're looking for Apple, you're going to either be looking for Apple the fruit, or you can be looking for Apple the company, right? Um, or anything that's underneath that brand. So if you're looking for an iPhone, that also relates to the entity of Apple, right? MacBooks, anything like that, right? So those are all brand searches, right? And generally, the brand is going to own all your brand searches, right? So it's very hard to rank for someone else's brand, but also it's very important because Google uses brand search to identify if a query or a brand is trustworthy, right? So Google's always said the answer to search is brands, right? And most searches out there nowadays, I think something over 70% of them are branded searches. So people are searching for Nike shoes or whatever like that versus running shoes, um, iPhones versus just cell phones, right? Or Samsung phones versus Android phones or whatever. Even Android's technically an entity term, right? So, but it's very important because we have very strong ranking correlations with non-branded queries. So, I've done experiments in the past where I've inflated, say, like a brand search, right? So, like we were doing like a New York SEO agency thing, and we did some job postings. We're trying to hire writers, and instead of getting links to our company, we say, like, go search for our company, right? Do you want to apply for a job? You're gonna go, have to come look for our websites, see if the style of content makes sense for you, and then apply for a job. And just doing that alone, we were able to increase all our non-branded searches by, I think, about 400 to 500% within a couple of weeks, just because the power of the brand. So, does that make sense at all? But,
So you're saying you put up an ad, you put up a wanted ad, and in the
yeah.
wanted ad you say, hey, if you want to apply, search Tides and check out our site. And when someone searches search Tides, that's a brand search.
Yeah, yeah, and the more you have to relate there's different entities together. So like an entity is people, place, thing, right? Search Tides is an entity, and SEO is like an entity for as well. So we had to establish that Search Tides and SEO are related entities, right? So like when we did these job searches, people were searching for, like, search tides, SEO position or SEO job opening or whatever like that, and they would be able to tie those two keywords or entities together. The cheat code to that is just have a brand name with your main keyword in it. So like the other experiment I did was we owned this. It was just a site called like SEO New York Authority, right? So SEO New York Authority, people are just typing and typing and typing, and I was able to get from nowhere SEO New York to position like 3 or 4 for SEO New York, and in a matter of like 3 weeks or something like that. It was ridiculously fast.
And
Just
was that organic or was that maps as well or both or
yeah, both actually. Yeah, it was both. Organic popped up right after the maps did. So
how else can brands cultivate brand
yeah,
search through content?
yes. Sorry. Well, there's a few things you want to do. We recommend for like all our clients is make sure you have like like at least a newsletter that's touching base on um always keeping people involved. Like the more people see your brand name, they'll recognize it. That's a very important thing to do. The other thing that we've been doing specifically for like say like an e-commerce store, like for example, like a florist store. I think florists are one of the probably the best to do this, but they'll name arrangements that are like almost like they'll trademark their arrangements, right? And so when people are looking for certain um, flower arrangements, they'll actually go start looking for that specific trademark of the flower arrangements, right? And now that's become part of their brand, right? And so instead of just having like a flower shop and going like wedding flowers or whatever like that, people want to look for the wife wifezilla uh, bouquet whatever like that. And the more they can market that, then you're only competing against yourself in reality, right? Because everyone's looking for that brand, and you also have something else like that, all your other products are going to start ranking a little bit more because it goes underneath your entity umbrella, basically.
So, Whitezilla, that sounds like an original word,
Yeah,
and bouquet obviously gives it some relevancy. What if
correct.
it's just passion bouquet or, red
Yeah, it's too
rose?
generic. Yeah,
Does it
and
have to be a unique word to own it?
you're gonna want something that the competition is very low on it, right? So if there's anyone else that has that brand name or anything that's similar to that, then you're gonna have to win that space before it gets asserted over to that. We've had issues with this with an actual like insurance companies that we worked with where they're like, "Oh, we have this new insurance company." It's like they're owned by a parent company, and so this breakout brand, this like more fun brand for targeted young audience and stuff like that. And the naming of the brand was, we go search for it, and there's like five other corporations that are the same, right? And so when people are searching for it, they would not even show up number one for that term, right? They would be position eight, and so it took a long time just to win over their own brand name, right? So that's the first thing. You have to own your own brand name, right? And that's at the highest level. So never mind just your product names, right? So your product names, you want to win over those and your main entity. So that's the thing when people, it's very popular in Google or an SEO space to own, say, an SEO keyword domain, right? Like um, people have like white t-shirts.com or something like that, and they're like, oh, I'm going to rank for white t-shirts.com, whatever, right? And very easily, right? And I'm going to rank for it because I exact match domain, and they never even get to the bottom of page 5 a lot of times, right? It works really well in local spaces or very niche spaces, but it's very difficult to own your brand, right? So you have to, that's the one thing you have to, the first thing you ever do when you start an SEO is own your own brand. Make sure you establish an entity. You got all your YouTube channels and all your social media channels, all that stuff like that. When people type that query in, it should be nothing but you, right?
So, in addition to the website, you also do have to set up all the social profiles. You have to
Yeah,
populate them, and you have to link them back to the domain, and to basically show Google that you're the real deal. Now, I know we're talking about enterprise here, but just let's
yeah,
slip it in for the errant, local B2B listener here. You get a phone call from Richard Steinberg, the attorney.
yeah,
Richard, that's a pretty common name, probably for attorneys. There's probably quite a few. And he says, you know what? I need to own my brand,
yeah.
but I have nothing going on. And there's all these other Richard Steinbergs. What do you do? How do you go about that? High level.
Yeah, it's a common thing. Even some SEOs have that issue with their own name, right? Luckily, my name's pretty rare. so it wasn't very difficult to rank mine. But yeah, you're gonna have to basically own your name on every single property you can find that will give you a link back to it, right? Your brand is essentially is not a single entity in terms of like one property. It starts at your website, but it's across every single platform, right? So the more you can associate that name plus that industry or lawyer or whatever it is, but you got a profile on every single law profile site out there. You got your Google business, you got your all your social media platforms. You're gonna have your Crunchbase, all this stuff. Like there's a good 300-400 different sites that you can make a like a like a profile on there, start publishing your own guest post content or whatever like that kind of stuff like that. And eventually it'll all start coming down to it. um, Unfortunately, if you're going up against, say, you're that lawyer and someone else has your name and he's like an Olympic athlete, you're gonna have like a hard time getting above that, unless you kind of brand your name with something else. So a lot of times, if someone is competing with like a very common name, I would say you want to brand your name to either have like your middle initial or something like that, or a nickname into it or something like that, that you can make it unique and very easy to know, right? So,
Okay, let's move on to topical relevancy.
yeah.
What is it and why does it matter?
So the thing that's kind of really working well in Google, especially since the helpful content updates, which was in 22 September there, is that the more your site has a core focus, the better it's going to perform in terms of being an expert or authoritativeness on a specific niche or type of topic, right? So the if you ever went to if you had like a web like I have a website about sleep habits and stuff like that, and that's the only thing we ever talk about is just like how to get better sleep, sleep hacking, biohacking, sleep, all that stuff like that, and only stick to the same core topic, right? So um, you're not. Everyone has to realize that they're not this giant publishing site like Forbes, where we can write about every single thing underneath, the sun. The more concentrated your topic coverage is, the better you will perform, and you'll become more authoritative, right? So you want to be the go-to place for that topic, right? And if you're writing about, say, we've had clients who write about they're writing about like specific pharmaceutical drugs, and then they're writing about natural remedies, and then they're writing about male topics and versus female topics, and it's just kind of like all over the place, right? And they were massively hit by the helpful content update, and it wasn't until all that stuff was detangled that they recovered. So
Walk us through your topical core mapping process.
yeah, so the process right now we do is we do use AI. We will use a tool like Screaming Frog, which is it's a web crawler, and we'll put the website in there, and we'll get back a list of all the pages into your website, and we'll just kind of like use like a simple prompt for Chat GPT or any AI tool that you have access to, basically, and just kind of say, hey, this is our core topic. Our core topic is on pharmaceutical industry news, whatever like that. Rate this article from like a 1 to 5, like 1 being very topical and 5 being not relevant at all, and then give us back a score, right? And then just have it basically crawl every single article on the website, and we would use that to kind of give us like an overall rating, or like I've done like little maps, heat maps and stuff like that, just so people can kind of see things. And that just kind of helps you really identify the content that's just like, hey, yeah, this stuff doesn't even make sense to be on the website. It's not relevant. It's probably causing us more harm than anything or good. And some of the stuff that we've had to do is kind of like a painful cut, which is kind of like, yeah, this stuff is not relevant to the site, but it was driving in traffic, right? And that's the harder ones to get rid of, because those can greatly skew the topic of your website a little bit more than the ones that are just say. It's very easy to cut traffic from, or if you had 100 articles that were not relevant to your website and they're not performing, it's easy to just get rid of those, gut them, right? So, but
Well, is it? I'm going to challenge that for a second.
yeah,
So let's say for a second that you've got a legacy site that you've been asked to improve the topical relevancy for, and the site's been up for 10 years, and
yeah,
there's a lot of posts on the site which are, I don't want to say off topic. They're related to the topic, but they're derivative. They're not exactly about whatever it is the site may be there for from a commercial standpoint. They
yeah.
may be more the types of things that people might be interested in. Oh, hold on one sec. Sorry. All right, I'm going to start that over because I'm going to have to cut that part out.
Okay.
Let me just make a note here. 26 minutes. Okay, so I want to challenge that assumption, because what if you've got a legacy site and the legacy site is 10 years old and it's got all sorts of posts that are about aspects of the business that the site is there to promote, but they're not directly about selling the product. But
Yeah.
they've accumulated a lot of backlinks over the years. So now the question is it more important to refocus the off-topic content, or can you just add more focused content?
Yeah, absolutely. It's more of like a ratio thing, right? So it's, if you have all the sites that we've seen that have been penalized have a very small topical core and they've gone way off topic everything. So it's just the more you can have that concentrated, the better. Like we still will have, like PR pieces that are very loosely related to the website, but they got 100 something links, so we're not going to gut that obviously, but we can sometimes go back to those things and just add a little bit more relevance to our product or whatever it is to make it more relevant. But most of the time we're not gonna be like, okay, this is the not relevant to the, it's like a 3 in the relevance scale, I'm gonna chop it. It's like, no, we're looking for the extremes on either end, right? So especially like the gossipy type stuff that's just there. Um, if it's missing from the business today, would it affect your bottom line tomorrow? And then if it's like the answer is no, then you probably want to get rid of it. If we're going to chop it off and it's going to lose a lot of backlinks and stuff like that, that's going to hurt the bottom line. So I definitely would not want to remove those.
How do you feel about refocusing the content, and how do you go about that? Because I know you have a process for that.
Yeah. I mean, there's not like one way to do anything on that, right? So, but you can definitely just try to, like, we use a lot of tuning tools like Surfer SEO and stuff like that, where we're like, hey, like we're trying to optimize this a little bit to be more relevant to our actual content, and how do we just put more related entities or whatever like that into the content that would make it more relevant for what we're talking about. So um for example, like we've done one on um I did one for like the worst cities to sleep in and stuff like that, and it wasn't ranking it at all, right, but had a lot of links, and so we just rewrote it to actually rank for the actual term we wanted to go out for, right? So and it was just becoming more relevant because it didn't have any of the entities, it didn't have this, it was just all infographic and image based stuff like that. So you can structure or basically calibrate the contents to be more fitting for the audience, and you can just, there's no real process that I would actually follow other than just saying, like, what's my logical brain say, how to make this more relevant for our audience. But it's usually the stuff that edge cases are the ones that are probably the ones that are easier to kind of just get rid of, right? So, and you're going to gut the ones that are the obvious things first and then go from there. So anything that you're kind of like on the fence with, that's the ones you usually want to just kind of keep there and get rid of the rest, right? So
In terms of profiles, is there anything that needs to be done to enhance them? Writer profile.
Yeah, you want to definitely convey expertise or subject matter expert, or whatever you are, to why someone would actually listen to what you are saying. And when people write about an article nowadays, especially like anything that's YMYL, your money, your life, kind of thing like that, a lot of people just kind of like skip right down to the
Just want
author
to
and
just interrupt you for 1 second
yeah,
here. YMYL stands for your money or your life, and it has to do with health
yeah,
or financial services content.
yeah. Thanks. So those are industries that are very much more picky with Google because it's yeah, exactly. It's like you're dealing
Does
with
that
someone's life.
content need to be authored by a professional or a doctor?
No, it does. It doesn't, but it helps. We've done tests where we've authored things with, we got PhD this, PhD that, whatever like that, and it doesn't really improve the rankings of it, but it does give you more credibility to the contents when someone's actually reading it. Um, so one thing or another is it's more of like say like a chiropractor has just because they're a doctor doesn't mean that they should be writing about this topic, right? So it doesn't automatically instill credibility for anything, right? But in our opinion, like more a subject matter expert is going to be more credible than anything PhD level or like doctorate or whatever like that. But it's like how does this person is there whatever they're writing about, is it believable, and how do they convey that, right? So um
You
and
see so many of these articles today that have these little like quick takeaways on the top.
yeah.
I think you call it quick intent content. Talk to us a little bit about using quick intent content to enhance existing content and to bring it more on topic.
Yeah, and that's one of the easiest things or quickest things to improve your content in terms of like helpful content updates, is just by valuing your customers' time and helping them get the answer they're looking for a lot quicker, right? So people are getting kind of really frustrated. They land on your web page and they have to scroll through 6 7 unorganized paragraphs, and there's just like a lot of fluff there, right? So we use something like key takeaways, which would basically summarize the most important points of an article and stick it up right at the top of the article. So if anyone is looking for that quick answer, which most people are, right, is that it's going to satisfy the actual intent a lot faster, right? Our goal is not to keep people on the web page for as long as we can, despite a lot of people think it's to satisfy a query, right? So people are searching for something, and how do we satisfy that query really quickly? The way to keep them on the page longer, or have them convert them into a customer or whatever like that, is like, hey, we fed them this information really well, but there's little cliffhangers there or whatever like that. It's like, hey, like the most effective way for weight loss is just to cut your calories, but and then there's new research down here saying that these are something else that you can do or more effective, or this unique strategy that's going to get you on. People are going to continue to read the story, and then they'll click on links, and then they'll be more engaged in the content. But we got them in there with a quick answer, right? We got their specific precise answer as quick as possible. We've used AI to help write these things. We just take the article and put it in there and say, hey, can you summarize this into like 3 4 takeaways, right? And we also make sure that we don't have like bullet points in the top. It's one of those things where we just kind of like jump right into the answers, because that helps with if you have never heard of Google snippets or AI overviews, it's very helpful in that answer, because Google likes to decode information that's very structured and easy to read. So they'll find like the query, and then that's the query and the answer kind of mixed together. So it's two birds with one stone. It's good for the reader. It's good for search. So
One of the things you also see pretty common in a lot of particularly YMYL
yeah,
articles, those again, if you're listening, are your money or your life articles about either healthcare or finance or insurance or something that is mega important. You see a lot of these articles open up with some sort of a statistic, like right at the top, some statistic.
yeah,
The the whoever came up with the statistic is cited. Is that effective? And do those statistics need to be original? Can you just reuse the same statistics if they're public? How does that work?
yeah. I mean, the you can reuse stats all the time. The more authoritative the stat, the better, which is going to be from like your own data. So if you're like we're working, say, with a financial company, they're going to have insights and statistics that no one else has, and that stuff is way more trustworthy, right? So like we can say like, oh, our the people that have applied for these specific loans are this that whatever, and it will convey a lot more trust. And you want to have, the more you can insert your brand into your content, the better, right? So like that's developing that brand play as well, right? But
Is that because of content lift? And that's sort of a term you hear people say now. This idea that Google is not going to be so interested in content that is a regurgitation of what it already has in the index, that it's looking for something new. So does the addition of new content, a new idea, a new theory, a new way of looking at existing content, I guess triangulating multiple sources to come up with some new conclusion. Is that really the way that you get, ranking today? Is that what it takes?
yeah, and I don't know if it's actually for Google that's doing it, or is it just the way that people respond to your content a lot better, and then Google can measure that. Like Google can see that, yeah, there's like a unique statistic or whatever, or something on your page that they've never seen, but they not might necessarily rank it higher than anything else that they've seen, right? So it's the same thing with back in the day, unique images and stuff like that were always used to rank better, and then now all of a sudden photo stock is ranking better than everything else just because Google had more descriptions, or they actually know what that image is more about than their unique image they've never seen before, right? So it's kind of like an interesting concept. But in terms of like stats, like the more a single stat will add some validity to your article. A unique stat that come out of your own database, that means that you're going to just you're branding yourself, and you're becoming authoritative on the topic as well. We also like to use it because we want people to share our statistics in their content and get links, right? So the more natural links we can get, the better, in our opinion, right? So
What about FAQs? You see now at the bottom of articles, often FAQs, and those will be H tagged. You'll have like H3s for the
yeah,
headlines and maybe H2s for the answers, something like that. Are those effective, and do they work?
yeah. I mean, FAQs are probably one of the biggest secret weapons out there in terms of ranking content. It's they're in terms of it's going to work in a few different ways. For one, they're very high in keyword density, which is what we in the SEO industry say, like, if we're trying to rank for a certain specific term, we want to make sure that that keyword or keyword, that phrase, the related entities are on the content enough times, where the FAQs actually are one of the least, there's no fluff in them. They're very condensed, and they're just very keyword rich focused, right? So it helps us from a keyword standpoint. The structure of the content, it also ranks very well in those snippets that we were talking about before. So whenever Google auto completes an answer, or it gives you people also ask questions, more often than not, a lot of those are coming directly from people's FAQ answers, right? So they rank really well, and people enjoy them because they don't want to read the whole article; they just want to see certain things, right? The only thing that we recommend in terms of ours article content creation and stuff like that is that, like, the takeaways are a little bit more summaries of the actual article, right? But then we adjust the FAQs to cover topic ideas or questions that aren't answered in the main topic. So if it's not answered in there, right, then, or people frequently come and ask questions about this piece of content we wrote, or the product we launched, or whatever like that, that it has its own that's its dedicated spot for it, right? So
Um, how do you handle internal anchor remapping at scale? And just to break that down for somebody who maybe doesn't understand, websites often will link keywords on pages to other pages in the site. And sometimes, if you do that arbitrarily over the course of a decade, you wind up with a real albatross, because you might have a keyword that you want to rank for
yeah.
that's ranking to different pages for the same keyword on different pages on the site. Becomes kind of messy. And so let's say you're brought in to clean that up. How do you do that?
Yeah. So like the first thing we usually do is we will do like perform like a website crawl, and we'll give the customer like a visualization of like the way they're linking right now, and just like, hey, this is like the spider web or yarn of wool that you've created or whatever right now, and it's very confusing. Google doesn't know what things are, right? Because every time we talk about a topic on a website, what we're trying to do is assign only one specific page for a specific topic, right? So Google knows that, like, hey, we're talking about Canadian Goose jackets. It's only going to be specific. There's one main page for that. Everything else should be like, supporting topics or different sizes or whatever like that is. But there's only one page that says, like, hey, we're talking about when we link for Canadian Goose jackets, the entire website, it's only going to link to that one page, so there's no confusion, right?
And
And
if it's an e-commerce store, that
yeah,
page probably going to be a collection, right? Not a product detail page.
yeah, it depends on the way you set up your store, whatever. But because some if you only had one Canadian Goose jacket, then you would probably have just the one single product, right? It'd be a lot
Well,
more
every
simple.
all products get discontinued eventually.
Yeah, yeah,
So
that's
even in
true.
that case, like, would you advise you got one product, but
Yeah.
you don't know? I mean, 10 years from now, would it be better to put that one product on a collection page and then send all the traffic to the collection page?
Or you can just change the product, update the product. So like if you think like Amazon wise, like a merchant will have like a certain number of products, whatever, and they can just keep updating their 5 products and changing the difference, instead of having them re-update all their SKUs, whatever like that. So there's different tactics and stuff like that, and each one of them I would probably say like, well, the pros or cons to each one would be, it's just whatever the weight kind of falls onto that one side right there. But most likely right now, in terms of the way things are ranking, Google really loves the collection pages ranking, because you're going to land on a page with choices, not just one thing, right? So unless you're looking for that specific thing, right? So as I said, if you're looking for that small jacket, then your small red jacket and specific whatever SKU, you're probably going to land on a product page, not a category page, right? So
I was talking to a client who has a large site for travel, and there's all sorts of mixed signals around different destinations and hotels. And so I had recommended adding a tag onto the destination sites to say, hotel plus destination as a tag on those tiles on the collection page, so that Google would get a stronger signal based on density that these are hotels at a specific destination rather than just hotels. Because
right.
even if they won the exact match for hotels, they would do no business.
Yeah.
And their concern was, well, gosh, isn't that black hat? Am I going to have my exact phrase that I want to rank for on there too many times? And is that a danger? I mean, I know what I told them, but what would you say in that situation?
So in terms of like anchor text and say like on your site navigation and stuff like that, or is that you're
On
saying?
on a collection page,
Right.
is there a danger of including the word that you want to rank for too many times, even if it is relevant and on target?
No, not generally. You can push the keyword density extremely high on a page without ever actually having a penalty. And most people think it's like, I can only have it once in the title tag or whatever like that. That's kind of like a myth. But you can push it pretty aggressively, and we've had other people in other SEO places. They show keyword density of 5,000, 6,000 per times repeated on the page, and it's fine still, right? And the concept on those things is more of like, it's not you ranking the page, it's your competitors are ranking you, right? So wherever you fall along those competitors, and you need to do some competitive research and say like, hey, like we have evidence that shows that you can put this term on your page 72 times plus, no problem, because everyone else is doing it, why can't you do it, right? So it makes no sense to say you can't do that, right? And in terms of being just having a page that's very ambiguous and stuff like that, it also just, it's not good for the consumer either. So they don't know, like, if you're just trying to rank for hotels or whatever, it's never going to help either side. What's good for Google is most likely usually good for the consumer. So
Derek, let's get back to this idea of internal anchor remapping.
yeah,
How do
yeah,
you determine what anchor text in which articles should link to which pages?
yeah. So the way we map it is we'll assign all your main pages like an entity. So not all your say if you had like a more of like a news based website, for example, there your all your stories for the day, they're not going to be entity pages usually, right? They're going to be, like an update to a story or whatever like that. Those types of pages are entity pages, right? But if you have like a page that's just, dedicated to Donald Trump or whatever like that kind of thing like that, and then all you got all these different stories that are coming out, all those stories would link back to the main topic, right, with the exact match anchor text. So it's always, hey, that's if you want to know all the news or the category or the Canadian Goose Jackets, whatever like that. We're always linking back up to the main category specifically with an anchor text. And you don't even, most people think you need a lot of variations in those anchor texts, but it's just not true, right? Um, there's instances where you might need that when you're, building pages that are 100,000 plus 200,000 pages and stuff like that. But
So just to give a sort of a concrete example, based on the coats, the men's length, the men's full length goose down coats.
yeah,
If I had a blog and I'm blogging about which coats to wear in which temperatures, then the name of the coat would link back to the collection page.
yeah, you're gonna have your main. You're gonna try to find like your most broadest term that you would probably want to rank that page for, your category page, which is your Canadian Goose Jackets or whatever it is, and then it links back up to that main the category page all the time. And it can be in your breadcrumbs, it could be in your product descriptions, it could be like um, pretty much anywhere of those, like even your schema, it's going to link back up to the main category. So it's just you don't want to be just too generic. So it's like you're not going to try winter jackets, for example. It's because winter jackets is never going to give you an edge to rank because it's just too broad and competitive. It's like trying to rank for like yoga pants or something like that. So,
Derek, how is your niche finder tool coming along?
uh, it's coming pretty good. It's just internal use right now still, and we like to use it for. We monitor about 5,000 websites, and we just been segmenting them out to different niches. Say like, hey, we know these are AI websites. We know these are cooking websites. These are sites that have massively used. They've grown their index very fast, or grown or shrank their index very fast, and we want to see how they're responding in terms of like we call it like almost like a big SEO weather map, right? So it's just like like right now I'll use it to develop like case studies and stuff like hey, all these mummy bloggers are having issues, and we found 1,000 of them, and 100 of them are doing really well, and the other 1,000 are doing poorly. What can we do to kind of figure out what's different, right?
This is a slide you shared when I heard you talk at SEO Rockstars that kind of shows which niches got hit the worst by the helpful content update.
Yeah,
Maybe talk us through this if you would.
yeah, I can barely see it from here, but so yeah, like all the anything on the left side there were sites that would really got big. Yeah, they got a lot of traffic boosts, right? So, and these are the categorization was done by AI, so it's not always going to get 100 everything 100% correctly. But things on the far right side are the ones that got penalized the most. Like so, a lot of the home and garden sites, big time blogging websites, anything that's just really had no core focus. The blogging is
For
what.
so many years, there were all these people talking
Yeah,
about building your personal brand. Are those the people that got hit?
yeah, those are the people that said they listened to some podcast and then they said, I'm going to go make my own website and it's just going to talk about everything I've ever done. And most likely they just, they do not weather the updates very well. So there's a lot of those sites are kind of like the individual travel bloggers, food bloggers, or specifically one of the ones that got hit the most because they don't really have anything interesting or new or anything that's different than the other 1,000 posts that they're competing against, right?
You think personal brand and brands and influencers are less important to SEO, and they pretty much have moved over to social media?
Yeah, but there's like a circle to it, right? So there's a catch-22. The more if you're really popular on social, then that brand search is going to go skyrocketing up. If people are searching for your personal brand a lot, then everything you write is going to be a little bit more touch of gold to it, right? And it's going to rank a lot faster, right? And so it's the people that we're getting struggling is just like, hey, you go to they write a food blog, and then you go to their Instagram, they got 100 followers, and their YouTube channel has 10 videos or something like that. They're not being sought out after, right? But when someone's looking for like, hey, Eric's barbecue place or whatever like that, and you've published hundreds of YouTube videos, and you have a very active Instagram account, and people are coming from Instagram and YouTube to your channel all the time. There's a very big ecosystem around you. Then most likely your content's going to survive. Hopefully your content is to par on the same thing. Like if they're all original content, it's original. Um, your own pictures. You're not you're not stealing other people's photos and recipes and stuff like that, right? So it's unique in that in its own format. And usually you're going to be specializing in something like if you're just doing barbecue, then your core topic is a lot smaller than saying like um, you're talking barbecue wings one day, then you're saying how to roast Brussels sprouts the next day, right? So
If you're listening to the podcast rather than the live stream, on the show blog, I'll have this chart that we're discussing. Just to read it out to you, I mean, the sectors that seem like they were not hit at all by HCU, based on Derek's research, were technology and software. I mean, they were fine. Government and nonprofit, fine. Business and finance, fine. Career and employment, fine. And then pretty much everyone else got hit after that. The worst being blogging, microblogging, then home and garden, then religion and spiritual. And it's a really interesting chart. If you have a chance to check it out, hop on over to the show blog and you can see it there.
Yeah, and a lot of those industries are like, I mean, there's been quite a few updates and recoveries, but then again, Google trades one set of parameters for another set of parameters. So whenever they turn the dial up on something else, someone else is getting whacked on the other end. So it's back and forth. Like there's a lot of blogs that have recovered, but everything we've been monitoring, like 75 to 80% have not even come close. It's the people that have put in a lot of effort that have recovered. But then there's a lot of sites that have just been caught in the storm that recovered by not doing anything, but they already had decent content. And they had, they were following the guidelines and stuff like that. It's just casualties of war, I think, so.
Awesome. Well, listen, thanks for taking the time to do this. How can people get a hold of you?
You can always email me. Specifically, it's just derek.iwasiuk@searchtides.com, or you can just pretty much Google me, and all my social profiles are there. So, and happy to reach out. We always do. I like to give people a unique approach to fixing their sites a lot of times, and I'm an SEO strategist at core, so that's my main thing. So
awesome. Well, we'll have you back, and we'll do a deep dive in just e-commerce SEO next time.
Sounds good. Thanks for having me.
Thanks so much.